And our talk today is called Can We Talk to God? It's based on the book from Ernest Holmes, and there are a few out there if anyone wants to buy them. And read even more, learn even more, experience even more of this relationship that we have with God. So the simple answer, can we talk to God, is yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And we always are. Whether we know it or not, whether we believe it or not, it's always happening. And we are communicating with God in multiple ways. So we are talking, but if we are extremely wise, we are also listening. And perhaps we're listening even more than we're talking at God. So the question would be, do you listen to God? Do you listen within yourself to what God has to say? Because that is a form of talking with God. Doesn't have to have words. It can be that simple. We correspond with God in multiple ways.
Ernest Holmes uses the terminology, quite often we talk at God rather than talking to God. We're not really necessarily having a conversation as much as we're just barking out what we want, our demands and our desires, and telling God, well, God, what we wish to experience in our lives. But how often are we actually having a conversation which involves listening? Sometimes that seems to be a shortcoming for us, doesn't it? We quite often say that every thought is a prayer. Therefore, every thought is a conversation with God. Could it really be that our every thought is a conversation with God? Every thought? We tend to think that our thoughts are private, but are they really? We know our thoughts create. Even unconscious thoughts create conditions in our lives. Our inner unconscious thoughts are therefore connected to universal consciousness. Anything and everything but personal, isn't it? Or private. If you're connected with all that is, every thought that we have is connected with all that is. And we're having a conversation with the universe.
Yes, we are. So not only are our thoughts private to us within, but they have a resonance that moves out into the world. Ernest Holmes says, let the inner ear listen to the voice of truth that is always speaking. That inner ear is intuition. And that intuition can come through us in those quiet moments of the heart. But it is always a voice of truth that speaks to us. And when we hear it, we know it. And sometimes we combat with it or bark back at it, as you said. I like that. I kind of wanted to go, arf, arf. Because we probably always do that, don't we? We receive a message and we go, no, that didn't fit into my plan. Let's try again. And it doesn't work that way. God has spoken to you, through you. You recognized it. You knew it. And then you went, arf, arf, as David said. So listening to our intuition, that's the art of listening with our inner ear that Ernest Holmes is talking about. And when we listen to that inner ear, our body has its own music. And so our body is always resonating to and attracting to us. It has rhythms and it has melodies. And so as we listen within, we will pick up on that. I know this morning as I was going over and over and over the ideas in the talk to allow them to flow, I started noticing that I could hear my heartbeat. And I was like, wow, well, I'm hearing more than my heartbeat. I'm hearing it echo through my veins. I'm hearing it pulse through my entire body. And that is becoming so in tune with the nature that we are, that we're opening up our intuition to allow.
In the Quran, Allah says, we have created man, and we know the prompting of his heart, and we are nearer to him than even his jugular vein. In other translations it says, closer than your neck vein, or like the one where it says, even closer than your life vein. God is closer to you than your neck vein. What exactly does that mean? It means it's internal, for one thing. Inner thoughts are nearer the heart and the soul than outer words. The neck vein is an internal part of us. It's actually within the body. The ears receive information from the outer world and bring it in. We're so accustomed to listening with our ears and recognizing, relating physical sound vibrations to conversation that we don't hear or recognize or comprehend or understand, as Angela said. Feelings, impressions, matters of the heart. We don't hear those things as conversation or inspiration from God. Maybe all of our spiritual conversation is through inspiration. And I came across that word and I thought, inspiration. In spirit, or spirit in us. Interesting way of looking at that word, isn't it? The spirit in us is speaking to us, through us. And so therefore, moments of inspiration are when we actually hear the voice of God through the inner voice speaking intuitively within us. That's part of the idea of really understanding. It's not necessarily God imparting wisdom to us or giving us information as much as us suddenly feeling within ourselves a sense of, once again, understanding. That was really beautiful, Angela. A sense of understanding and recognition of something that is beyond who we are and what we are in our physical entity. Rumi says, there's a voice that doesn't use words. Listen.
That's beautiful. So what I'm hearing you say is that our intuition is our inspiration. That's gorgeous. So what that means for me is that we are to press our ear close to spirit and listen. It's rather like pressing the impress of our thought, our desires into the universal law. So in the book, on page 102, Ernest Holmes writes, I believe that God is to each one what that person is to God. So what we are in our experience, what we are in life, that is what God is to each one of us. Now I dare say that we might make some different choices when we're communicating with our friends and family if we remembered that how we are speaking to loved ones, how we are showing up in experiences, is God showing up in that experience. He says, we know only as much of this nature as we embody. As much as we demonstrate, that is as much of God as we understand. And there's probably always more for us. On the next page, he writes that if we are divine beings, why is it that we are so limited and forlorn, poor, miserable, and unhappy? And what I want to say first about that is that I bet most of us that have been in Signs of Mind for a while are not. Most of the time anyway. Most of the time, I bet we're in a good place. And most of the time, when we're not in a good place, we know exactly what we need to do to move that. He says that the answer is ignorance of our own nature, which really means that it's as simple as going within, pressing our ear close to spirit, and listening. Because that power within, that power that is everywhere present, is all-knowing. It is unconditional love. And we often talk about unconditional love being God. But if you are God, and you are, then you are that unconditional love. And it's wise for us to give it to ourselves and to everyone around us. So how do we do that? How do we create a life where everything we desire, we attract to us? Well, today we're talking about a couple different ways, and one of them is sitting in the quiet. Sitting quiet long enough for the internal chatter to subside and become fully present to the now moment. It means eliminating all thoughts of lack, limitation, fear, all thoughts of what I'm going to do next when I'm done with this meditation, eliminating all thoughts of what that other person said to me or how I'm going to respond and handle it, and simply being in the presence. And you know, that is so powerful. And we know that when we do it. And then sometimes we step away from it. And we don't do it in a situation. And then we wonder how we got ourselves in that mess. We forgot to sincerely listen within. Tune out everything else and simply be present to the universal energy. That universal energy is simultaneously all that is and collapsed into one. And in that moment, it is you. And as we do this, we will gently release things that don't nourish our spirit. It's a body, mind, soul opportunity. Abraham talks about something called supreme allowing. And what that is allowing another who's not allowing you. I'm going to say that again because I had to read it twice myself. Supreme allowing is allowing another who's not allowing you. So in this world, we have people that brush up against us in a way that feels negative, that feels harsh or hurtful. And it's simply allowing them to be them, to follow their path, their guidance. And the reason that we would want to engage in it is so that we don't allow their hatred to have an effect on us, to keep us from being a true lover of life, a true giver of life. So that supreme allowing is actually being your God self, being your divine self. A doctor once told a patient, there is nothing wrong with you that what's right with you can't fix.
So I'm getting a new insight according to what you just said too. And it's the idea that the only time we have challenges in conversation is when we feel there's a separation between us. If we could just recognize that we're all intertwined, we're all, in fact, not even intertwined, but just one being. And all we have to do is hold that beingness of who we are. We wouldn't feel any need to move across some distance, to go across some chasm, to speak in somebody's ear. We're already there. We are already it. The entire universal intelligence is within. We don't need to look around us at form and limitation to be able to see the universe. We simply need to look within because we are it. It's really that simple. Maybe it's not that easy to understand, but it is that simple. The Bible says, "Beloved, now are we the sons of God, and it does not yet appear what we shall be. But we know that when he shall appear, we shall be like him, for we shall see him as he is." Basically, that's what it's telling us is, we shall see him as he is, and we shall hear him as he is, because we are made in his spiritual image and likeness. We are spiritual beings having a physical experience. We are spiritual beings, and I think we need to challenge ourselves to listen, to converse, to be our divine self, if we wish to hear divine intelligence speaking through us. We shall see and hear God when we recognize our true essence is spiritual, not just physical. When we recognize our oneness, we can create more efficiently.
I I kind of got lost there with that Bible quote because there were too many his.
Yeah.
I was wondering, who's this his we're talking about here today?
I was going to change that up, and I actually had written it out, it's, and then I thought, well, but then it's confusing because we're talking about his and its and whatever, so.
I got it, I figured it out. Ernest Holmes wrote in this book, our experience is the logical outcome of our inner vision. So let's take a look at that vision, if it's our inner vision. Vision casting was a centuries-old custom that Dr. Michael Beckwith developed or refined into a modern version, a spiritual practice that we claim in our affirmation, our mission vision statement each week, that we are in practicing spiritual practices, that we have many great tools, and visioning is one of them. Visioning is the idea of allowing God to direct and inform through our intuition. So visioning is opening ourselves up, and it poses 5 questions. If you stayed last year one Sunday, we did visioning for our new building. Visioning is not saying, okay, well, we want our building to be like this and like this and like this, and it has to have this and that. And we all agree, oh no, we don't all agree. Okay, well, this is what I want. That is envisioning. Visioning is opening up to that intuitive within us and allowing. And regardless of whatever situation we find ourselves in, we can always use visioning. It's so powerful that I have written out some of the 5 questions, and you can pick one up when you give your offering. You can pick up one of these and take it home with you and use it for everything in your life. So here is what happens is when you're envisioning, you just open up and allow whatever comes through you. And after each question, you've been sitting in the silent, allowing your intuition of inspiration to come through you. You then have paper and pencil and you just write down some of the ideas that come through you. And then you close your eyes, get back into that meditative state, and open yourself up to allow the second question. So here are the questions, and I'm going to give you a brief rundown using the idea of financial freedom. So the first question is, what is Spirit's highest vision for my financial freedom? And you can do it in a group, like we did for the center, or you can do it for the universe. But for this one, let's say that it's my financial freedom. What is Spirit's highest vision? And I open up and allow that, and then I write down what comes through me without any judgment. No judgment to it at all. And then the second question is, what is my role in this situation? Because you know, we usually come to the table seeing ourselves playing a role in whatever experience we're about to have, whether it's career or relationship. And haven't you ever been surprised? Surprised by, oh, well, this isn't the role I thought I would be playing. So this is the role that Spirit is providing for us, not the one that we have developed in our own mind. The third question is, what must I release in order for the highest outcome to come about? So releasing. And the fourth one is, what spiritual quality must I embrace for the highest outcome to come about? So spiritual qualities are quite often God qualities, although it doesn't have to be. If you're looking for something like, say you want more patience, that could turn into your spiritual quality. What might that look like? It might look like being more loving. It might look like having greater peace within. So you can, if you receive a word, you might want to look at what God qualities you could place within that. And of course, always, if our prayers or our visions aren't working, go back in and work them again, because they are always working. It just might be what we're thinking within them. The last question is, what else, if anything, would Spirit like to share with me about this situation?
Ernest Holmes says, I know that every constructive demand or request I make upon the universe is already granted. Already granted. Goes along with the saying of Jesus that pray believing you already have and you will receive. Knowing that it is already there. We know that our mental desires infused with emotional feelings become manifest. We know that they materialize before us. This is basically a form of conversation. Well, confirmation as well, actually. Knowing what I wish, expressing that desire, and putting a little feeling behind it, that desire, makes things manifest. Our thinking is communing with God. Expressing our feelings behind that adds a little energy that allows it to come into fruition. Perhaps we tend to misunderstand the process, thinking that only intentional thoughts produce or materialize before us. We think we need to make a supplication or fill out a request or fill out a formal, take a formal action or follow a prescribed system or pray a certain way. As the Bible says, pray with a contrite heart. By the way, contrite means with guilt or humility. Not exactly the direction that I wish to go. Or we need to pray in a certain secret, magical, mystical method to receive, when all we really have to do is think. That's all we have to do. It's really that simple. Don't even have to think consciously. We just have to think.
And I like what you were saying about the way we think, to think constructively. The saying you said, every constructive demand or request is already granted, because if you really think about that, that is true, but so is every destructive demand or request that I place into the law. So when we think consciously, we want to think constructively. What is of that which is eternal and everlasting? And so as we're thinking, we're actually making realizations. And that requires us to delve a little deeper and look into our belief systems and look at the ideas that play in the back of our mind, because those are so powerful. And as we can allow them, by spending time visioning, by spending time in meditation and silence, allow them to come to the surface and we recognize what we're playing over and over in our head. I know for myself, I've thought to myself, ooh, did I really think that? What kind of a person would think that? That wasn't nice. Okay, well, it came from somewhere, and if you're just realizing that you had that thought, after all these years, it probably played itself out in some other ways also. So let's uproot it, get rid of it, and in its place, create loving kindness, constructive ideas. We each get to decide if and when we will take that responsibility for ourselves and make the necessary changes. And it's important that we come to realize how powerful we really are.
It reminds me of one of my favorite David quotes, things that I said a long time ago. Quite often I think to myself, I can't believe I used to believe that. And realizing that the things and conditions that were appearing in my life that were so miserable at the time, I was creating them. I was having a conversation with God saying, this is what I believe, God. And God saying, okay, there you go. If that's what you believe, there it is. And now I'm thankful that I can look back and say, oh, I can't believe I used to believe that. Because, oh, I hear some things that I used to say back in the day, or I hear like on movies or television shows or something, hear somebody saying something, and or friends or whatever, they say something, I go, ooh, I used to say that too. Ouch. So I was actually creating in my life things that I didn't actually want.
And we are powerful. In Dancing with Wolves, Grandfather says, when you feel powerless, that's because you stopped listening to your own heart. That's where your power comes from.
Elizabeth Canty says, I am that powerful place where heaven and earth meet, where infinite and the finite express, where love and law create. You are that place. you are having that conversation right here and right now.
And so it is.